Okay, welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving into something super fascinating. We are going to completely uncover the hidden machinery that actually powers the artificial intelligence we use every single day. If you're a beginner trying to demystify how all this tech actually works, or just, a focused learner who wants to finally grasp the bigger picture for your own projects, you are absolutely in the right place. We're going to break this whole thing down literally layer by layer. Let's get into it.
But right off the bat, I want you to ask yourself a quick question. How many times have you used AI today without even realizing it? Seriously, just take a second and think about your morning routine. Look, when we hear the phrase artificial intelligence, I think a lot of us still picture, futuristic robots or crazy sci-fi movies. But the reality is way more subtle. And honestly, it is already deeply, deeply embedded in your everyday life.
Think about it. Before you even logged onto your computer for work today, you probably unlocked your phone with Face ID, right? Well, that relies on machine vision and learning algorithms just to verify your face. And then you probably scroll through social media, where AI is constantly filtering content and customizing your feed based entirely on your unique history. Maybe you used Google Maps to commute, relying on AI to crunch live traffic and weather data in real time. And hey, later tonight you'll probably relax with Netflix, where AI actually drives about 80% of what we end up watching through those highly personalized recommendations. It's everywhere.
So to really understand how all this works, it helps to think of AI kind of like a massive iceberg made up of 5 distinct layers. Today we'll be covering number 1, the application layer, 2, the model layer, 3, the data layer, 4, the infrastructure layer, and finally, number 5, the governance layer.
Starting at the very top, we have Layer 1, the application layer. This is exactly where humans meet artificial intelligence.
Now, the scale of this layer is just vast. This is the tip of the iceberg that we actually see and interact with. On the consumer side, you've got your everyday tools, right? The chatbots you use to help draft a tricky email, smart home assistants like Alexa, or those real-time translation apps on your phone. But flip over to the enterprise side, and this takes the shape of predictive dashboards for massive sales teams, completely automated workflows, and even autonomous logistics that can predict delivery delays before they happen. The big takeaway here is that no matter how ridiculously powerful the underlying tech is, this application layer is where the AI actually delivers real, tangible social and economic value to us.
Moving right along to Layer 2, the model layer. You can think of this as the brain, recognizing the patterns. So, as we drop just below the surface of that iceberg, we find the actual engine of all this intelligence. At a really high level, AI works surprisingly like a human brain. In the old days, a programmer would have to write thousands of super rigid rules, basically saying, hey, if X happens, you must do Y. But modern AI doesn't work like that. Instead, the model takes in vast amounts of information, processes it, learns from the underlying patterns, and then makes decisions or predictions entirely on its own. Whether we're talking about a massive foundation model, like a large language model, or just a simpler machine learning algorithm, this layer right here is where the actual learning and inference happens.
And the absolute core building block of this brain is something called the artificial neuron. Now, the technical definition is that it's a fundamental computational element that receives inputs, performs a weighted operation on them, and passes the result through a nonlinear activation function. I know, that sounds like a total mouthful, but honestly, just think of it as a tiny digital decision maker. It takes in signals, decides how important they are by weighing them, and applies a simple math function to make a choice. And by chaining thousands or literally millions of these tiny neurons together into incredibly complex networks, the system can learn deeply intricate relationships. It's pretty mind-blowing.
Okay, so how do these neurons actually learn anything? Well, it generally happens in 3 main steps. First up is the forward pass. This is where data flows forward through that massive network of neurons to make a rough prediction. Next is the error check. The system basically looks at its own prediction, compares it to the actual correct answer, and says, okay, how wrong was I? And third, and guys, this is where the magic literally happens, is the backward pass, or backpropagation. That error signal flows backward through the network, slightly tweaking and adjusting all the weights of those individual neurons so that the next time around the prediction is just a tiny bit better. It loops through this process millions of times until it finally learns.
Which brings us to Layer 3, the data layer. This is what's fueling the intelligence.
Now, the absolute golden rule here is so simple. Garbage in, garbage out. If your AI is trained on messy, incomplete, or biased data, its outputs are going to be totally flawed, no matter how advanced that model layer is. So to train these massive models, the data basically comes from 3 primary sources. First, you have open web data, which is just massive data scraped straight from the internet. Think text, images, the works. Then you've got proprietary data. This is the private stuff like internal enterprise databases, your purchase history, or website click streams. And lately, we're seeing a huge rise in synthetic data.
This is artificially generated data used to train and validate models securely when real data is scarce. But no matter the source, all of this data has to be aggressively collected, cleaned, and organized to become the high-octane fuel for AI.
Down we go to layer 4, the infrastructure layer. We're talking the physical metal and compute.
We have finally reached the absolute bottom of the iceberg. You know, it's so easy for us to think of AI as this invisible thing just living out there in the digital ether. But the reality? Modern AI relies heavily on massive cloud providers, remote access to heavy-duty hardware, and sprawling, hyperscale data centers. This is the literal, physical bedrock that makes all of that crazy data processing and model training we just talked about even possible.
Just to put the sheer scale of this into perspective, AI requires immense physical resources. We're not just talking about a couple of strong laptops here. We're talking about highly advanced semiconductors, specifically GPUs and custom logic chips that are precision designed to do complex math unbelievably fast. It requires high-performance servers, massive sprawling arrays of data storage, and low-latency fiber optic networking just to connect it all together seamlessly. And, crucially, maybe the biggest bottleneck of all, it requires massive amounts of electricity and direct access to the power grid just to keep those data centers running and cooled down. It is a massive physical footprint.
And finally, layer 5, the governance layer, maintaining control, security, and trust.
Now, governance actually isn't a bottom layer like the others. It's more like a wraparound layer that permeates the entire AI stack from top to bottom. It ensures transparency, it actively audits these models for bias, it manages who actually has role-based access to what, and it actively defends against adversarial AI security threats. And why this matters to you is pretty simple. As AI starts making more and more critical decisions in our lives, everything from, approving a mortgage loan to making medical diagnoses, we absolutely need strong oversight. Without it, we risk serious operational mistakes, wildly biased outputs, and massive security breaches. It's just non-negotiable.
Which leaves us with this final, provocative thought for you to ponder. How do we successfully balance rapid, world-changing AI innovation with the absolute necessity for human trust and safety? Honestly, understanding this whole AI stack, from the physical servers drawing huge amounts of power all the way up to that slick little application sitting right there on your phone, that is the very first step in answering that question. It empowers you to actually understand the tools that are actively shaping our future. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope this newfound understanding sparks your curiosity to just keep exploring this incredibly fascinating technology. Catch you next time.